Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canteen Cup. My name is Scott, and how is everybody doing today? Well, today is Saturday, and it's raining outside, so not a whole lot of activity for me to do outside today. You can hear my puppy running around in the background. He's feeling the cabin fever, too, so hopefully this will clear out. The temperature's dropping, and we'll get back outside. What I wanted to talk about today is short resets in pistol triggers. I also have a podcast under the same name, Canteen Cup, and I was talking about gun modifications on the podcast, and I talked a little bit about a short reset trigger. Of course, trying to describe a short reset trigger is a little difficult, so I thought I would do a YouTube video, and then I referenced in my podcast that I would do a YouTube video on. So what is a short reset trigger? Well, first off, it typically applies to only striker fired and double action, single action pistols. And really what that means is on successive shots, you don't have to have as much trigger pull. And I've got a couple pistols here that I'll describe that with in the different types. My first pistol is a 2018 Glock Model 19. It's one of my newer pistols. And this is a striker-fired pistol. And really what that kind of means is when you cock the slide, it halfway cocks the hammer, and then your trigger does the rest. So I want to stop right here and talk about gun safety. Gun safety is a personal matter. How you take care of gun safety is your business. I am not here to teach you gun safety. So just keep that in mind, that when it comes to gun safety, if you feel you're not safe with a gun, go get some professional help. So anyhow, moving along with a striker fired pistol, and if you watch the trigger when I rack the slide, it goes to the cocked or ready position. When you squeeze the trigger, and I'll try to do this with my other hand so you can see the actual trigger movement on a striker-fired pistol, and all of them are similar. You see there's a lot of take-up, and then you hit this wall, and then you push a little harder, it gets a little mushy, and then it goes. Okay, and then when I let go of the trigger, you see it stays there, and when I re-rack the slide, it goes back to a ready position, a ready to fire position. Now, when we talk about a short reset, you go ahead and do the same thing. You squeeze off the first round, except this time you hold the trigger back. I'm going to use my other hand real quick. And then, when the slide cycles, you still hold it in. And then what you do is you release it only till you feel or only if you feel or hear a click. And hopefully you'll be able to hear this. Okay, now notice that once it's clicked, this gun is now ready to fire, but it does not have the full travel, if I just let it go. But I can pull the trigger again, and I'm at that hard stop, and then just mush a little bit, and then it goes. Where some people, if they don't know about the short reset, they let the trigger all the way out, whereas you only have to let it out that far. And that's when we talk about a short reset. What that does, it gives you better control over the trigger. The trigger doesn't have all that extra mush in there that you got to deal with. And it acts more like a single action trigger, like a Colt 1911. So that's what we talk about, a short reset, and there's different varieties of short reset. I'll show this one to you again. and you have to let it out. And see, you have to let it out a little bit, and then you hear that click, or you feel that click in your finger, and you're ready to shoot. To train, you should train yourself that on your second and successive shots, you only let the trigger out as far as that click. And what that does, it makes you a little bit more accurate, makes you a little bit faster. And while I'm doing it slow here with practice, it's pretty quick. So that's a Glock. And that's one. The next short reset I'm going to show you is this is a 1987 SIG P226 made in Germany. It's a great little gun. Again, with the SIGs, you have a double action, single action trigger. What that means is, and if you watch the hammer on the back here, the first pull of the trigger is double action. And one of the differences between this and a striker fired is you can do this as many times as you want. Whereas with a striker fired, you can only do it once. And after that, you have a dead trigger. One of the advantages to this is because you can pull the trigger multiple times. If you have a hard primer and you want to try to make, if you're in a defensive situation, sometimes pulling the trigger a second time on the same cartridge will fire the cartridge. The other advantage of single action, double action is your second and successive shots. You now have basically a 1911 style trigger. In this case, it's very short and very crisp. Boom. Very nice trigger. Reminds me of my 1911s I used to own. But you let go of it, and again, you can have a double action, and then a single action. Now, on this one, we'll do the same thing. You can do the same thing. You have the trigger, hold it back after you fire, and then you can let it go. With this one, it takes it a while to go click. Not bad, probably about the same as a Glock, but then you have a little bit of play in there before you get back to that single action trigger. But again, with training, it does the same thing. And it's a lot better than letting it, if you do it otherwise. With these triggers, it doesn't go all the way forward like the striker fires do, but you still have a little bit of slop with this type of trigger. So again, it's a nice crisp, probably 4 or 5 pound trigger. Very nice, very easy to shoot. All right, now lastly, this is my 1993 P228. Again, both these guns are made in Germany. The Glock is made in Austria. It has the same style trigger as my 226. In other words, it's a double action first, and then single action second and successive shots. The difference is I put a short reset trigger kit in this, which is available from SIG. Now watch the reset on this. Boom, it's right there. And so now really what you have is a single action 1911 style trigger. Very sweet, very easy to shoot. Again, having that single action second and successive shots is accurate and faster. And then with the short reset, it's even better. Notice that if I let this go, there's still some slop. And so really how you want to do this, I'll use the decocker this time. That's this lever right here, it decocks. But if I shoot and I just let it go, look at that. Versus if I let it go and I let my finger roll the way out, then I still have to make up some slack. So the idea is to train yourself that when you pull the trigger on these, you hold the trigger back and then you let it out just enough to catch that reset. And then you just have a nice, clean, crisp braking trigger. Now, some people say, why do you have a double action, single action trigger? Why not just go with striker fired, or why not go with a single action only trigger? 1911s are single action only, and they do take training because they do have lighter triggers. You do have to use a safety with a 1911 style gun because it's dangerous to carry around that gun with the safety off because the trigger is so light. The advantage of having a double action, single action is that first trigger pull is about 10 pounds. And that helps prevent accidental discharges because it's a heavy trigger. In other words, if you are pulling it, you know you're pulling it. And if you accidentally try to holster your weapon with your finger still in the trigger guard, you'll feel that pull and hopefully you'll stop yourself before you shoot yourself. Again, you have to excuse my dogs. They're a little cooped in today. So that's one of the advantages is that the double action, that heavy first trigger pull is your safety. And with these guns, you can decock them using this lever right here, and that brings it back to that double action only. So there you have it. That's a kind of a brief explanation of the short reset. Again, it's training. You pull that first round, and then you hold it back, and then you train yourself to just let it out enough for that reset, and then you're right back to the good part of the trigger pull. Boom. So I hope that explains it. For those of you that have come over from my podcast, welcome. Glad to have you with me. For those of you that are here, hope you enjoyed it. Again, it's just a little thing on how short resets work. Like any firearm, whichever you decide to use, whatever your preference is, really you need to become proficient. And you need to be, the first modification you make to any gun starts with the shooter. You need to be a safe shooter, and you need to be a proficient shooter. You need to have good basic marksmanship skills before you go into the fancy stuff. You should be a pretty good shooter before you decide how to modify your guns. My P228 and my SIG P226, because of their age, the SIG did not have the short reset triggers. That's only a fairly recent, I'm not sure when they came out, but it's fairly recent. But I can buy the parts from SIG and drop them into these two guns, and then I'll have that short reset trigger. The kit is about $50, and I think you can do it yourself, but I had a gunsmith do mine because I wanted him to kind of go through these guns because they're a little bit old and make sure everything's okay, and that cost me an additional $35. The short reset trigger is a premium feature on many of the SIG pistols, and it costs you more money to get that. So, like I said, the first thing is be safe. Safety is up to you. Whatever gun you decide to use, whatever platform it is, be safe with it. A Glock, a striker fired, or H&K VP9s, or some of the others out there, the SIG P320, that's a different animal than the double action, single actions like the SIG P220, the P220 series, the HK USPs, the P30s, the Czech CZ75s, the Beretta 92s. Those are all double action, single action. At least some of the variants are. But you need to understand how those particular guns work, and you need to shoot those well. So if you don't have a good, if you're not getting range time, you need to get range time. You need to shoot. You need to practice. And it's not all about range time. Dry firing is a great way to develop your skills. You don't always need to be firing a bullet to practice your trigger pull, to practice your breathing, to practice your stance, to practice your draw, to practice your holstering, to practice being safe. You can do that without bullets in the chamber. And another thing you can do is to find a .22 version of your pistol, or at least similar, and practice your basic marksmanship skills with that .22. It's cheaper, and you still get the skill. You know, pistol shooting is a lot like karate, and I've said this before. You know, you go to a dojo and you stand there and you practice punching. You're punching air and you're doing it thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And what you're doing is you're creating muscle memory. And that muscle memory becomes automatic, so that when you are put into a stressful situation, you know, kind of what happens is your second brain takes over and you kind of go into auto mode and you do what you train. And so if you train to fire a gun a certain way, that's the way you're going to do it when things get sideways. So practice, you know, you don't have to, you know, practice a lot. You don't have to, you know, shoot thousands of rounds every week. I wish I could, but I can't. I try to go at least a couple times a month. And, you know, sometimes I only shoot 50 or 100 rounds, but, you know, staying at home and practicing your dry fire and practicing your trigger, practicing your sight alignment, you know, getting that automatic reflex in, that when you pick the gun up, every time you pick the gun up, you're looking down the sights. That's a big thing right there. So that's all I had to. Like I said, I was just elaborating a little bit on my podcast, but I thought everybody might learn something, might enjoy this. So be safe and be secure and stay dry. We'll see you out there.